my name is Dinithi. Welcome back to my channel, Books and Coffee, and today I'm going to recommend you some young adult books. Before we start, I want to say a big thank you to all of you who subscribed. We just hit 100 subscribers, so thank you so much. And I will say this, I said this in my Instagram as well, I won't waste your time and I hope you have a good time every time you come to my channel. Let's get on to the video. I got quite a lot of requests from you guys on my Bookstagram, as well as some comments here asking for me to do a few YA recommendations and maybe do like a reading vlog on it. So you know what, I thought I might as well just do both. So in this video I'm going to talk about all the books that I have read and loved, and I'm going to recommend them to you. And on my reading vlog I'm going to read some new YA books that have come out recently and then see if they are good enough for you guys to read as well. Now, as many of you guys already know, I'm not the biggest fan of young adult books. I mean, I was, and I used to read a lot of it, but I've outgrown them now and I don't read as much anymore. Having said that, I am still interested in reading books that deviate from that typical common tropes that you see in YA and try to tell a different story, a more interesting story. So whenever I come across books like that, I always pick them up. So I made a carefully curated list of YA books from different genres, so there's a book for everybody, and let's get into it. The first one is The Illuminati Files by Amy Kaufman and G. Christoph. This is a book I will recommend to anybody who wants to dip into the YA sci-fi genre or just want to read something completely different. Of course, before I continue, I have to mention that I do not support this male author who wrote this book. I always separate the art from the artist. Just because they are good writers doesn't make them good human beings. And there's also a female author who's associated with this book, so I want to give credit to her, I want to support her, so that's why I'm recommending this book. Anyway, back to the book. This is set in dystopian world of 2075 and follows one of the most common tropes in the dystopian genre, which is that the corporations are now what's governing the nations and not governments or parliaments or anything like that. You see that a lot in dystopian sci-fi. So what you see is these two mega corporations who is at war over this planet that's at the front of the universe, and the people in it have to evacuate on a hostile warship when these two corporations rain down upon them. Things are like really intense and fast-paced from the very beginning, and then you have a plague inside one of these ships that these people are on, and then you have a rogue AI who does very questionable things and it makes you really terrified of what he would do next. And then nobody in charge tells anybody what's really going on. And honestly, there's so much in this book that you just can't put it down. And of course, to top it all off, it is written in such a cool format. It's basically a dossier of redacted emails, medical reports, interviews, IMs, and then just so much more, right? I don't know if you can see. I will try to show you. Yes, all of this. It's probably can't read this. So yeah, this entire book is like that, and I really had a good time reading it. There's two more books. This is a trilogy, so I highly recommend you pick this up because it's by far one of the best YA sci-fi I have ever read. The next one is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerry Manscalco. This I listened to as an audiobook, and it's such an old book because it got a lot of hype on BookTube a couple of years back and everybody was reading it. The story follows Audrey Wordsworth, who is a lord's daughter, and instead of a life of tea parties and silk dresses that is expected of a high-born lady, she slips away into the night to her uncle's lab where he's a coroner, as far as I can remember, and she studies forensic medicine there. She ends up working on a string of murders with a similar pattern, and as you can tell from the title, which turns out to be the victims of the notorious Jack the Ripper. There's so many twists and turns in this book that it's so fast-paced, the characters are really interesting, and I don't know if you can see the twist coming or not, but either way it doesn't matter because it's the entire story that's actually really interesting. And of course there's also a secondary plot to it that has a romance element, which that's not what I enjoyed in the book. Maybe you might enjoy it more. And of course this is a series. I think there are 4 books in it, but I'm only recommending you the first one because I felt like after the story the characters has run its course and I didn't enjoy the other books. I tried to read 2 of them, and you don't necessarily have to read them in order, because they follow different interesting cases throughout history. Like second one is hunting Prince Dracula, and then you have escaping from the Houdini, something like that. But yeah, regardless, I'm recommending this book. It's really fun. I really enjoyed it. But regardless, if you love a good murder mystery with a hint of true crime in it, this one is for you. Then I have The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. This I must have recommended to everybody who asked me about where to start with audiobooks. Now hold up, don't skip ahead. I'm not going to talk about why audiobooks are good and all that. Talking about this book, I listened to it on audio and it was a pretty great experience, but I also read this physically, so the book itself is a great read as well. So the story follows Henry Montague, or better known as Monty, who has been born and bred to be a gentleman. And just like Audrey in the previous book, he does not want to be. And unlike Audrey, he actually cannot be tamed. Like, he spends his time sleeping around with men and women and drinking and gambling and all the shit that a gentleman during this time is not supposed to do. And of course therein lies the irony. So anyway, he goes on this grand quest called the Grand Tour of Europe. It's sort of like a last hurrah to his life before he has to take over the family business from his father. And he also is carrying a major crush on his traveling companion and his best friend Percy. It's one of the most cutest relationships I've ever read. Okay, it's really cool. So as they embark upon this escapade, the story takes off in such a fun and adventurous way that keeps the page turning. You have pirates, you have manhunts and balls. I'm not sure if it's a masquerade ball, I can't remember for sure, but I know there's a ball in it somewhere. And of course Monty is such a cocky and fun, lovable character, you just instantly start rooting for him. So pick this up, give it a try. This also has a sequel that features Monty's sister Felicity, and that's also a book that I really enjoyed. But yes, try this out, please. Next one is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. John Green is one of the few authors that I have come across that writes young adults perfectly. He's such a smart dude, okay? And the way he writes his characters is by giving them that same intelligence, that same intuition and wit, which makes them great characters to read as well as to be remembered. So this story follows a girl named Asa who is struggling with severe anxiety and OCD and navigating her daily existence with the ever-tightening spirals of her thoughts. Yes, I have anxiety, but it is not as severe as it is in this book. But I was able to feel everything that these characters were feeling regardless. Anxiety and OCD can be very scary, it can be very dangerous, and it can literally take over your entire thought process until all that is left is these never-ending spirals of thoughts that can never accomplish anything productive or positive. It becomes very painful and claustrophobic, and it can make you incredibly paranoid. This thought spiral is very real, and I know almost all of us have gone through this at least in one point of their lives. John Green talks about this so much better than I ever could, so I highly recommend you to pick it up. It's a small book. You can finish it in a day, but it is such a powerful read. The next one is no surprise, but it is The Six of Crows duology by liveradinithi. I cannot have a YA recommendations list without putting this in. I'll keep it short because I know so many of you already know about this, especially since the show came out. It's about 6 unlikely people banding together to pull off a heist. You have great characters, great scenes, some really cool dynamics, and you have like subtle yet complicated romantic relationships. It's such a great tale of love and trauma, and of course this timeless conflict between loyalty and duty. Of course, you don't have to read anything in the Grishaverse, which is the world that these books are set in, before you read this duology. I read it without reading anything and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Pick this up, read it, you won't be disappointed. Now to give you a very fun, light and quick read, and that is Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. This is a YA contemporary romance and it follows the trope enemies to lovers. The story essentially follows this big burger chain stealing a grilled cheese recipe from this family-owned deli, and the two companies get into this Twitter feud over this recipe, and of course the two main characters are on the opposite side. It's really fun to read. I love all the drama, I love the mystery. It actually had really good recipes in the book which I really wanted to make, but I didn't have all these American chocolates they were talking about. But anyway, such a fun and good read. It's light-hearted, you can pick it up over like a rainy day and just fly through it. The next book I'm going to recommend is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I saw recently that this book was featured on The Times as top 100 YA books of all time, and that spot is well deserved. So this was inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and Tupac's thug life concept, which means the hate you give little infants F's everybody. The story follows 16-year-old Star becomes the sole witness when his friend is shot and killed by a cop, and his friend Khalil was unarmed. His death makes national headlines, and you follow the story as Star struggles to find her voice and get justice for his friend. It's such a powerful story with strong social commentary and political injustice. While there is a plot to the story and characters that you will adore, I'm recommending this book because of what it will teach. This is a book that should be in everybody's hands. It also does a really good job at pointing out the ways that some people can be so subtly racist without even realizing that they're doing it. It's a great book to read, to educate yourself with. It's also a really good story. It's beautifully written, so I highly recommend it. The next book is Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. She came out with this book earlier this year, and I read it a few days ago, and I really wanted to include it in this recommendations because this is a prequel to The Hate You Give, and it follows Maverick Carter when he was 17. Maverick is Star's father, and you see his life turning upside down when he has to take care of not one but two babies when he's 17. The events of this book aren't as intense as it is in The Hate You Give. Instead, you get an insight into the Garden Heights community, the family, the people, and most of all, the oppression. The kids in Garden Heights don't have the same privileges as their white counterparts do. There's one scene in the book where Maverick and his girlfriend Lisa take a drive out of the community, and the community next to them is a white neighborhood, and one of them comments and says that can't believe this actually exists right down our street, because the disparity is so much that you would think that these are two different worlds. Maverick has to take care of his family as he's the man of the house, and he does that the only way he knows how, and that is by dealing for the King Lords. He does that so that he can get a job and help his mom so that she doesn't have to do two jobs while his dad is in prison. I loved every second of this book. I loved it more than I thought I would, and it has some really funny moments that actually made me go back and reread them. These characters are so heartwarming and they are so lovable. It's just a great read. And just like in The Hate You Give, this book also explores the black experience really well. That is not me saying it because I'm not black. I can't comment on the black experience, but I did my research and it really does capture the black experience well. Okay, so the next one is a recommendation coming from my friend Inosh, because I don't read a lot of YA fantasy, but he reads predominantly fantasy, including YA fantasy. So I asked him to recommend something that he likes because he definitely knows more about fantasy than I do. So he went with The Seven Realms by Cinda Williams-Chimer. This is the name of the series, and the first book is called The Demon King. This one I will read the Goodreads description. Times are hard in the mountain city of Fellsmarsh. Reformed thief Han Alistair will do almost anything to eke out a living for his family. The only thing of value he has is something he can't sell, the thick silver cuffs he's worn since birth. They're clearly magicked. As he grows, they grow, and he's never been able to get them off. One day, Han and his clan friend Dancer confront three young wizards setting fire to the sacred mountain of Hanalea. Am I reading this right? Han takes an amulet from Micah, son of the High Wizard, to keep him from using it against them. Soon Han learns that the amulet has an evil history. It once belonged to the Demon King. So yeah, that's basically it. Now I asked him why he would recommend this book, right? Because it introduces an epic fantasy world with a diverse cast, and it builds relationships organically and also stresses the importance of platonic relationships as much as a romantic relationship, which I personally like to see that in books. He loved the book because it has one of the best us against the world tropes, which I know is so overdone at this point, but if you watch this, it is good. It is good. He knows his stuff. And also the romance is a major plot line, I'm assuming, and it builds up over 2 books, so it's kind of a slow burn. And also the writer apparently talks about privilege and racism really well. So I will recommend this to you guys. I'm also gonna read this book in the reading vlog where I read all YA books, so look forward to that. And thank you, Inosh, for recommending this. I'm also gonna leave his bookstagram in the description below if you guys want to check out for more fantasy recommendations. I'll also include my other friend Aisha's bookstagram. They both have really cool accounts, so go check it out. And that is it for today, guys. I hope you got some good recommendations. These books I have read multiple times and I really like them, so I hope you will do too. I hope you enjoy them and have a good time. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.